Welcome to Stars Podcast, your growth mindset mecca. We are all about self-leadership principles here at Stars Podcast. Our guests come from all over the world with very unique stories of how they hacked their way into success. As you'll quickly find out, nothing happens overnight. And as always, enjoy the journey. Welcome back to all you longtime listeners, and this is your first time. Welcome to the Stars Podcast family. Today we have a special guest, Kevin G. On Twitter, he is 4kids_crypto. He's an advocate for kids, using his platform to connect the generous to those in need. He comes from 4Kids. 4Kids exists to bring hope, homes, and healing to kids and families in crisis across South Florida and the Treasure Coast. In partnership with local churches, businesses, and government agencies, 4Kids is committed to redefining foster care in our community, one child at a time. There is one minor update. 4Kids is no longer doing the match on your donation. However, feel free to donate. Enjoy the show. So how's your day going?
It's going well. Yeah, I mean, no complaints. I'm ready for the weekend. It was great. Giving Tuesday was awesome. So we met our match, which was great. So, and yeah, it's been a good week so far.
With the Giving Tuesday, what was the match? I know that there was you guys were doing a drive and they were going to match up to 250,000, I think.
We had a $75,000 match. So some very generous friends of ours said, hey, tell people that if they give, we'll match it. I think we had 3 or 4 different, what we call partners, people who give to us. We consider, they're partnering with us on our mission.
Mm-hmm.
So they had basically, a few of them got together and we got $75,000. So basically we just said, hey, for every gift you give, if you give $100, it becomes $200. So we were able to get, we met our match, which is good. And I mean, they would give us the money anyways, most likely, but it helps spur more people to give. On Giving Tuesday, every nonprofit is out there fundraising. So
yeah, right.
Not that it's a competition. They're all doing good work, but it's nice to have people who say, I don't want to just give, I want to help others give. So
yeah, it's always nice to have the group think in terms of that giving aspect. So
yeah, for sure. That's
the best kind of FOMO, huh?
Yeah. FOMO for good.
Yeah, absolutely. So those who aren't familiar with you, what is 4Kids, and maybe introduce yourself and what you would do over at 4Kids.
Sure. So 4Kids is a nonprofit. So if we really had to boil it down, we work on providing hope, homes, and healings to kids and family in crisis. So that's essentially what we do. So we do it through foster care. So we recruit families and train them and license them and support them in a way that they can provide the highest level of care to kids who are getting removed. We do the healing portion of it is essentially therapy. We created a trauma-informed therapeutic intervention, which is a fancy way of saying kids are going through trauma when they get removed. They're going through trauma when they get separated from their families, when they're switching schools. This is all on top of the potential trauma they experienced that forced them to get removed, whether it was abuse, abandonment, neglect. So we realized that something needed to be done to help them, not just put them in a good, loving home, but also help them kind of learn how to self-soothe and learn how to work through this trauma. And that has really been incredible. We have a team of about 30 people on our therapeutic team to help our kids. So every child placed in a 4Kids home gets a biopsychosocial assessment, and we kind of see, hey, what's the level of trauma here? Can we train the parents on how to work with them on this, or do they need an actual therapist? And what's exciting about that is while we bill Medicaid for all children who are in foster care, we cover the cost of the additional stuff. So if anyone's ever had kids, they love their routines, especially kids who are in foster care. So when you introduce a new child into that home, it throws off everyone's routine. And sometimes the biological kids in the home need to talk to somebody about this big change, where now all the focus is on this new child who may act out in ways that I'm not used to. So we can't bill Medicaid for those kids, and we don't want to not serve them, because a family is a family unit. It's not just one child. So we fundraise the difference to cover it, so that not just the child is getting therapy, but the whole home, if needed, can provide a good, loving home. So that's something we're really excited about. It's probably been the last 5 years that we've built it out. In addition to that, we are an implementing partner for an organization called Care Portal, which sounds like a lot of big words. It's essentially, Care Portal is a technology that connects a need to people who can meet the need in its simplest form. So if a DCF caseworker goes and visits a home and realizes that a mom is at risk of losing her kids because they're all sleeping in the same bed. While that might be cultural in the eyes of the state, that's not right. So they can go into Care Portal and type in, this mom needs a few beds. And we go to churches and community partners and businesses and say, would you be willing to just hear these needs and meet them if you can? And it's been awesome. Like, I love to say 4Kids isn't just an agency, it's a movement, and we're engaging the community for kids in foster care. And this has really been that. I'd love to tell the story of a mom had that exact need, 3 beds. She had 5 kids and they were all sleeping in 3 beds. So we put a need in there for 2 beds, and within 1 minute, people raised their hand and said, I'll buy a bed, I'll bring it over and deliver it. So it's awesome because there are too many kids in foster care already, and the ones that need to be kept safe should be removed to be kept safe. But the ones where it's just poverty and people may not have been set up for the best ways for success, we're helping keep those kids in their home, avoiding the trauma, and hopefully setting up these families for success.
How would somebody get involved with that Care Portal?
Sure. So we're based in South Florida, so we're in 6 counties with Care Portal, but Care Portal itself is a nationwide thing. So if you're in South Florida, I'd say reach out to us. 4kids.us is our website. If you're not, I would say just Google search Care Portal and maybe your city or your local area and see who's doing it in that area. If it's not active there, I would say reach out to a local nonprofit who helps out and says, how do we get this here? Because I know
how do we set this up
to be everywhere. So
yeah, that would be my next question, is if we don't have one, how to set it up. So it's just getting in touch with a nonprofit and say, hey, let's get this thing set up.
Right. And or telling Care Portal, I think, say you live in Pittsburgh and you want to get it out there, saying, hey, I live in Pittsburgh, how can we get this here? Reaching out to them, and they may be in talks with somebody, or might be in their strategic plan to get to Pittsburgh by 2 years or something. But getting the ball rolling and knowing there's an interest, it's important, because the government has shifted away from treating kids in foster care. They really want to keep kids out of foster care.
Right.
Part of the issue is that sometimes the government makes a decision and doesn't follow through on it the best way. So they kind of just flipped the switch and said, okay, now all the money is going to prevention and not kids in care. So everything we can
I remember when that shift happened, whenever I was still in the social work industry, and we experienced quite the influx whenever I transitioned from the group home setting to it was more or less privatized probation is what it was. I worked for Abraxas, and what happened was all of those kids that I used to have at the group home were now back home, but still in the system in preventative cares. And what was interesting too about that preventative care piece of it was the parents were still the parents, and they weren't, I don't want to say this for all of them, but they were still in the same situation, and they were now being asked to do more.
Right.
When they weren't even doing what they were supposed to at the beginning. And that part to me was traumatizing for me, because these kids were not set up for success as a result of that modality, even though they wanted to keep them in their home and out of like a group home setting. But the implementation and the turnaround on it wasn't effective.
Right. I mean, it's the oldest cliche about kids, but it's true. It takes a village. And a lot of times you send kids home and, DCF's involved for 6 months and they don't work on building a village. So that's why, 4Kids is passionate about engaging the whole community and saying, it takes a village to raise these kids. And that's true for foster families, and it's true for non-foster families. So especially true for families that have had their kids removed and have tried to learn the parenting skills. It's different when a DCF caseworker shows up at your house and says, how's everything going, than when a neighbor comes by and says, how's everything?
Man, my microphone's not the right microphone, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Why is that not turned on? That's so goofed.
happens to me a lot too, where I'll have the speaker set up for a Zoom
All
meeting.
right, there you go.
Yeah, you sound a lot clearer there.
Yeah,
Not that you sounded bad before, but
I was using the webcam microphone.
uh,
That sounded bad. It had to have been bad. But anyhow, we're back in business now. I'm glad I checked that. I don't know why I even checked it. But yeah, to go back to what we were talking about, it's, taking a village to raise them, and those programs that are invested in creating that economy and that village is like, that seems to be where 4Kids is headed, or
right,
not headed, but that's where your ethos is creating the entire ecosystem and support system.
right.
What have been some growing pains in trying to accomplish that, growing the community and growing that support system?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question because everyone assumes 4Kids is a foster care agency. So when we show up at your church or your business, they assume that we're talking about, we want your families or we want your money. And sometimes we don't want either of that. Sometimes we want you guys to volunteer,
Yeah.
And it's weird because I always say it's not hard to fundraise for kids who are in crisis. We can come out and tell stories about a little girl that we just had get removed who had 13 broken bones as a 6-month-old. And how she was born premature, and she had it. You can break hearts with those stories and then say, that girl is now adopted and she's successful and she's walking on her own and she's growing. And people will say, how can I help? How can I be a part of that? The growing pains turn into finding people who want to get involved. Where do they go? Do they become a foster parent? Do they become a volunteer? Do they join what we call our champions, which are just local business people who try to spread awareness and raise money? And how to not sap one program for another, because as humans, I think we tend to do what's easiest and not what's always what we're called to. So while you might feel like, hey, I have a calling on my life to help kids who have been abused, and I have an extra bedroom and I can probably do this. If we give you the option of babysitting and cooking a meal once a week, you might do that instead.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a form of, it's almost like a form of accountability, and saying like, hey, if you can do this, let's do it. We can help you.
But it's also good that you set out the expectation too, and the fact that you have other options that are almost, and I don't want to like downplay anything that anybody does for your organization, but instead of being full-time, you could be part-time, or you could be seasonal, or those are all options because of what you've built out. And so now anybody who wants to be involved, you can meet them at any level. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is true. Most people probably learn this about themselves at some point in their life of, I can't do something unless I'm taking care of myself first. It's true for leadership. It's true for personal development. And it's true for foster care, where if I can't foster, sometimes at face value, it sounds like rude to the kids, but it's not. Sometimes it's like, we need some time where I can just focus on, me and my wife, or I can just focus on me and my biological kids and let them know I still value them. And that might look like letting the foster child go sleep over at a respite home for a couple of days. And some families, they can't commit to taking kids, 24/7, but they can do weekends or Christmas breaks. And that time of investing as, your solid family unit, and saying, hey, we are solid here. We're together. We love each other. We value each other. And when this child comes back, we're going to say the same thing to them. But understanding that foster care, the goal is to reunify the child, and not allowing for division and jealousy, which always comes up naturally in humans. Investing in yourself and investing in the family is important. So it's invaluable, like you say, to have those people who maybe can do, instead of 24/7, a part-time role. And sometimes that's, coming over and doing laundry. So we recently created something called FAM, which is our Family Advocacy Ministry, which is essentially, we go to churches and say, not everyone can do everything, but everyone can do something. So if you want to cook a meal, you don't know what an immense blessing it is to a family of 5 to just show up on a Friday and be, hey, we got dinner taken care of. Whether it's pizza or a homemade meal, or hey, what's something in your house that needs fixing that dad just wants to take 5 minutes and watch a movie, and we'll clean the grill for you or something. And it's people who are like, yeah, I'll do that because now I'm helping. So that's those people are really invaluable. And we've built about 60 teams for our families of people who do that. Our president is on a team for one of our foster families, and we've got a few board members who do it. And it's such an easy on-ramp into it.
I like that. The acronym is just FAM anyhow.
Yeah. I laugh.
Clever.
I may or may not share this with the leadership here at 4Kids, but I laugh because they didn't know what FAM was. They just came up with it and called it FAM. And I was like, did you guys know that's like an actual thing? Like your FAM? And they're like, what does that mean? So
yeah,
you guys just backed into like an awesome acronym for this.
Absolutely, so. They did. That's what I'm thinking. They lucked into that one for sure.
Yeah.
So what are some initiatives that you have going right now that are new initiatives or continued initiatives that are really your focus?
So we are in the process of expanding. So we are en route to Southwest Florida to providing our services out there. So how we expand in the state of Florida is by DCF circuit. So if you're not familiar with Florida, it's like the Fort Myers, Naples area. We've just seen the need there for more good families. The people that are doing a great job, they just need more help. So that's something that we're really focusing on now. We're raising money to be able to do that, because if we're going to go, we want to do it well because the kids deserve it. So that's something we're excited about. We're looking for other locations as well across the state. We recently met with the Secretary of DCF for Florida, and she's like, we'd love you guys to come to Tampa. We don't want to stretch ourselves too thin, we want to do it well. So we have an affiliate out in Central Texas that we're currently working with as well, helping them do that. So expansion is a big thing we're working on. And we are also in the midst of supporting other foster care agencies across the country. So there is a foster care agency in Atlanta, Georgia that covers most of the state. And they're in a position where they get a lot of support financially, but they are trying to fundraise more. And 4Kids has been, blessed that we're able to fundraise well. So we're working with them on, hey, here's some best practices about how you can fundraise better. We had a call yesterday with a team in Arkansas who have expanded really well across the state. And they kind of poured into us about, hey, this is how you keep culture healthy across literally on the other side of the state. And they've come to us and been like, hey, how do you guys run programs well? We're interested in starting up different programs out there, and we can kind of talk to them. So we have this big mindset of collaboration where, the CEO loves to say, check your ego and logo at the door, and let's just help as many kids as possible. So we also have something called the Hope Initiative, which is it's kind of like it's a trauma-informed kind of technology that the kids can kind of go through and validate, hey, you've experienced something hard, but let's talk about how you can work through that. And we're testing it with agencies all over the country, California, Oregon, Georgia, Arkansas. I think in Michigan, we have some, Texas. So we're really trying to partner and say, when you guys are involved with 4Kids here, you're also helping there, because it's a movement. So
yeah, absolutely. And how are you working through? Did you say it was an app or something that they're working on?
We're working. It's still in like the testing phase, so it's not out yet, because it would be similar to, I'm not totally sure what it's going to look like yet, but we're calling it the Hope Initiative, and it would essentially be something that parents can get on their phone and work through it with their kids. So it's just, it's very early, so it might look different in the end process, but it's essentially like, hey, cleaning up your room. How can we use this as, a teaching moment, but also a healing moment?
Yeah. And that's interesting that you bring up the healing moment as well as teaching moment, because every time that I was interacting with our kids, it was like, after we had, we'll call it an incident, that was like when we became the closest, was because they acted out because of whatever reason. And then we intervened. And then afterwards, we were able to really talk about what the reasoning was for that. And now you're giving that power back to the parents to validate some of the behavior that they're having, being able to understand that acting out is sometimes involuntary almost. It's just, it's a reaction, and you don't really understand why you're doing it. I mean, they're kids. Like sometimes even without a bunch of trauma in their life, they don't understand why they're doing things, let alone add some trauma into the mix. And then, it's a lot to deal with. And to have that support system and something that is readily available for them as a tool to use is something of significance. What do you, and this is going to go into the weeds a little bit, and I apologize if you don't want to answer, you don't have to, but we talk about the kids all the time, but the goal is to reunite with the families. What are you seeing as like the biggest hurdle with the families in general for reunification?
I think that's a good question because it depends, honestly. The state in Florida, but also we really encourage what we call partnership with the foster families and the biological families. We don't ever want to make assumptions about biological families. I mean, sometimes we're just one phone call away from ending up in their shoes.
I hear it.
You lose your job and you've got, potentially some bad circumstances around you, and you end up drinking a little bit too much. The next thing you know, your kid's wandering in the street and they get removed, So we never want to frame them as the bad guy. And sometimes foster families are a little nervous to interact with them. And it's like, listen, these are people, like they're humans, and they didn't have the benefit of growing up maybe in the same situation you did, but what an awesome opportunity for you to model good parenting skills, to work with them and to build a relationship, So when it comes to getting them reunified, I say it depends, because sometimes, we have families where kids get removed at birth because they're substance exposed. And unfortunately, like substance abuse is tough to kick. And, it's hard enough to get off drugs when you want to. If you don't want to, it's a lot harder. No one's gonna force you to do something you don't want to do.
Right.
So we see a lot of kids end up entering like adoption mode, so to speak, because parents just aren't able to kick the habit. And it's a good time for kids to educate our families who are great and they get it, but also say, hey, listen, like talk to your kids about, it wasn't that they chose drugs over you. It was, they had an illness and they tried and they just couldn't. And it's not because they didn't love you or that they love something more. It was because they tried to get help and they realized they couldn't be the parent that you deserved, and kind of teaching them through that. And then some other times, like, I don't want to talk bad about some parents, but some parents are just like, my kids are going to have a better life with you than me. And it's difficult to admit, but they realize that. So, and sometimes parents work really hard and they realize, listen, there's an old quote in a book called Blue Like Jazz. And it says, sometimes you don't know how much you love something till you see someone else love it. And I think sometimes our biological families see that, they come to court, the foster parents come to court with the kids and they see how happy the kids are and they say, I want that. Like, this is my child. Yeah. And that's an awesome opportunity to almost ignite that flame in them and kind of model, hey, this is what a healthy relationship looks like. Because,
and you know what, that's that right there. That's the part. Right. That's the part. Because absolutely, maybe if they grew up and they never saw that, they can't model it.
Exactly. That's it. That's what I was just about to say. You parent how you were parented, and unfortunately, so many kids in foster care are kids of kids who were in foster care. So it's so important, to model it and say, hey, this is what a healthy relationship looks like with my kids. It's I always say, like, well, I'm not going to parent like my mom. That my parents were great, but I just recently got a dog, and I found myself saying things to my dog that my mom would say to me, and I'm like, oh. What happened here?
I sit there sometimes and I'm like, oh, I just said that, didn't I? Yeah, I did.
And it's just funny because it's like, I haven't been a kid for 20 years, like, but it's true. And if these, 22, 23-year-olds who have, a 2-year-old kid, they're going to parent how they learned how to be parented. And
absolutely.
So getting them the education and then having foster parents who can show them how, as a community, not saying I know better than you or you're not good at this, just saying, hey, follow me, like, let's do this together. I think it validates them in a way that is so great, but it also builds a relationship and a community long term.
And that was another thing that you had mentioned a little bit earlier, was the facility that you are partnered up with, Arkansas. They're really good about keeping their their culture across the state. What were some pointers for keeping that culture and keeping the community thriving?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And because as people grow and scale, especially businesses, it's like, how do you keep
Yes.
that? So it's funny, as we built our therapeutic program, the guy who started it and then eventually left to go make his own private practice, he told us, please make sure this stays a jazz band and doesn't become a marching band. And it's something that our CEO like really holds on tight to, because you kind of see the imagery there of, if it's just a bunch of people marching in a line together, it doesn't feel like a jazz band does. So I think some of like the key things with that is just understanding different places are going to have different cultures. Like we're based in Fort Lauderdale, but Naples is very different than Fort Lauderdale. And Arkansas is a lot different than us. So if we said, hey, what does your culture look like there? And it's like, okay, well, that's very different than, South Florida.
Yeah.
So understanding that culture looks different and look at different places, but there are some like hallmarks that are really important to it, and focusing on that while giving the freedom and being open-handed with, hey, here are the non-negotiables, and then everything else, like, let's let you do that. So
What are some of those hallmarks?
I think something we've really kind of focused on is having like a neighborhood kind of feel to it with somebody who's from the area. So as we've expanded out to Naples and as that team in Arkansas has grown, it's important to have someone from that area lead it. So our executive director out in Naples is from Naples. So he speaks the language, he knows the locations, he knows people out there, he knows the buildings. So that helps kind of, we've trained him and given him what we call a culture wash in 4Kids. And then he can go there and fill in the gaps with like that local area. So I think that's important. I think another hallmark of it is just staying true to like who you are. And I know it sounds like very cheesy, but at least in our hiring process and what we learned from the team out in Arkansas is you gotta hire people who get it naturally. You can train them, but is it a quote by Urban Meyer? You see the character of a guy when you get punched in the face. I don't know if that's Urban Meyer.
I don't know either, but yeah,
Mike Tyson. But when things are hard, when budgets aren't balancing, or when you're arguing at home with your family, and then you come into work and your boss yells at you, it's like that's when your culture shows. And having a culture keeper, someone who just gets it naturally, they kind of carry it well. I also think it's just being intentional about building culture.
How do you get that out of an interview?
Yeah. Lots of interviews.
That's really what it is, huh? You have to do lots of interviews with that person, or is it like multiple stages? Do you put them through like almost like a pressure cooker of sorts, and then asking questions after that or during that? I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can kind of sense it too. I mean, certain people are drawn to 4Kids and to be drawn, and to be drawn to work with kids, it's a certain kind of person.
Yeah.
And everyone always says, I couldn't do that. I couldn't handle it. I wouldn't be able to do that. And it's funny because for the longest time, I thought, well, why not? Don't you want to help? And then when I got married, my wife, her brother, so my brother-in-law has autism, and that's like heartbreaking for me.
Okay.
So working in that field, I couldn't do that. Now I finally understand what people say that.
Yeah.
But being drawn into that field, I think kind of attracts a certain kind of person. And then like in the interview process, you can kind of see it, in this situation, if it's some questions where, if your boss asked you to do something you felt was illogical, what would you do? Those things where it's like, well, of course I wouldn't do it, but like how they answer it, how they respond, how they think about it, you can kind of see it.
I guess as the interviewer, it would just come with experience asking those questions and how they react, and sort of historically, because no matter what, we're all very similar in the way that we behave, the way that we think. And that's something that I've come to realize, like by doing this podcast, is we all struggle with the same stuff. It's just a different flavor. We all think relatively similarly in terms of how we behave and how we react to things. So much so that there are books dedicated to it. It's psychology, so it's a proven science, and being able to identify that before you invest a bunch of time and resources into that person. That's why I wanted to ask you that, because I would go through interviews and interviews and interviews of getting direct care staff, because I was managing that the group home, and it would be great. They would be awesome in the interview. And then we would do the second interview. It went fine. And then we put them in a pressure situation on the actual units. And it was like, who is this person?
Yeah. Yeah.
And whenever you put them in that direct care situation, maybe after time they would have gotten better, but just being involved in the daily routine that we were involved in and do a shadowing process, I was like, these guys aren't going to work out.
Yeah.
But some of them surprised me, and they really worked out. But again, it was through more repetitions of that interview was I able to identify some key points, as you call them, hallmarks of those who were going to be successful. And some of those were, they had kids of their own, or they had like younger siblings or something like that, where they had to be almost like a caregiver.
Yeah.
Because that's essentially what we're doing there, is we're caregivers. Some form or fashion, we have to give care. and
right.
And being able to do that it takes a lot out of you. So it has to be a really strong individual to be able to be selfless in that respect, even though you are getting paid for it. In where I was from, it wasn't a lot.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of money in this. So it's an interesting field. And like you said, there are certain people drawn to it. And I think a lot of the times it was because of our own trauma that we got drawn to these industries. And I don't know what your background is with foster care or anything like that. If you would care to share,
Sure.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. So it's funny. Almost everyone who works here has some kind of story to how they got involved with it. Our CEO is a former foster parent and currently an adoptive parent. Two of our vice presidents have fostered or adopted themselves. One of them has fostered over 50 kids over his time. The other one,
oh my gosh,
3 kids with special needs. So we've got a leadership team that gets it, which is good. For me, it's like I never fostered. I've never done it. My parents struggled with infertility for a while, and it's actually it's a miracle that I'm here talking to you, because they told my parents they couldn't have kids. So while they were dealing with that, they adopted my older sister from foster care. And then, through a miracle, they had my sister and I'm a twin. So it's a cool story of how that happens, but I never personally experienced that foster care side of it.
What do you mean you're a twin?
Yeah, I have a twin sister.
So they went from not being able to have any kids to having twins, plus
Right.
They adopted prior.
Right.
Wow.
It's cool. I believe, my mom is a woman of faith, and, I'm I guess a man of faith. And we believe that, God wants to give us more than just what you ask for. He wants to give you double it. So we end up
literally.
So, but I mean, it's funny because we go through 4 kids and you ask people, and, we have a young staff. We have a pretty diverse staff. Social work draws that out. But we have a young staff, and some people are just, millennials and Gen Z are super passionate. And it's just, like I said, everyone wants to help kids. So you get people here who are drawn that way. They did an internship and they saw kids struggling and said, I got to do something about this. Other people is, they got pregnant at 16 and, they didn't have anyone around them. So they wanted to find an agency that's helping that way. So it's different for everybody, but I totally agree with you that there has to be something there, because the money is never great working at a nonprofit or working for the government. It's not great, but we don't do it for the money. Of course we need the paycheck, but the reward is much greater than, a nice dinner with your wife because you got a bonus. The reward is, look at this kid's life changed. And
for sure. Yeah.
That's what you remember.
That's where I've always, I guess, struggled with it, is there's so much good work being done, as it should be rewarded with a little bit more money, because the money that you do get, it almost puts you in a situation where you may need some help,
Right.
From organizations like 4Kids for adults.
Yeah.
Because it's not a lot, but at the same time, like, what are you after? What type of fulfillment are you looking for? And that's why I think that whenever you're like from maybe mid-20s almost to retirement is like there's a gap there of staff.
Yeah.
There's very young and then almost retired older. And then the middle, there's a vacancy because like everybody's out there working in different jobs that are quote unquote paying more. But they always like sort of come back. And that's where I'm at in my journey right now is like, I feel like I'm being called back into the space and I'm trying to figure it out of what that calling is.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's kind of everyone's own kind of experience to work out, because I learned very early in my career, I'm only 32. I feel weird saying early in my career. I have a bachelor's in psychology and then a master's in social work. So I graduated when I was probably 24, 25, and I've been working at 4Kids since. So I only have about 6 years of actual career, but I learned it's so important to enjoy where you work, and it's so important to enjoy the work you do. And it's almost more important to enjoy where you work more than the work you do, because there's no perfect workplace. I mean, there isn't. Everyone everywhere will have unless they work for themselves, and I'm sure they've got problems with that too. But enjoying the people that you work with and enjoying how you're doing the work, I think is what stops you from getting burnt out. And then the work you do kind of fills in the gap. And then, if some people's motivation is to, just get paid a lot, that's fine. But there's also things that come with that. Our CEO was former executive with Foot Locker, and he ran a tech industry where he's making tons of money. He felt unfulfilled. He felt like things were missing in his life, and he's come to work for a nonprofit, probably making a quarter of what he was making. But he is so incredibly passionate about the work that he does, and he's feeling much more fulfilled. And he's in a community that kind of speaks the same language as him. And we see lots of people come to 4Kids from that. We've had people leave from being fundraisers with other organizations for less money to come here where they don't get commission because, people are donating money to us to help kids, and say, I love it here. This is just the calling in my life. So, but it's different for everybody. I mean, my best friend, he was super invalidated in the work he was doing. And for him, he wanted to help out kids. Similar to us, he lives in Atlanta, and I encouraged him, hey, you should go foster at that agency we partner with. And he said, I don't want to do that. So he quit his job. He started his own business, and he's doing really well. And now he funds people who do that. And he feels really validated working for himself and being able to use the profits to support. So right. I think we're all different parts in a puzzle to help. And yeah, I mean, if I could give you a small piece of advice, figure out where you fit in there, just like not everyone's called to foster, and not everyone's, your job might be a little different at this stage.
Well, so it's funny that that you bring that up, and that's why this is almost like a guilty pleasure of mine, is being able to, and similar to the Hope Project, is like just to validate me and what even though you're not out there to get the validation of others or anything as your main purpose, but sometimes it's nice to know that you don't have to do exactly what somebody else is doing to be fulfilled for yourself to be fulfilled. Maybe that's just donating my time, or maybe that's donating some money that I've accrued from a different adventure. There are a bunch of different pieces of that puzzle to create a 4Kids, or to create some nonprofit agency that's helping, and being a small part of that is maybe just enough, or what exactly you need to have that fulfillment. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. And I think that sometimes it looks different at different points in your life too, So
yeah, that's true too.
He's been fostering since he was young, and he stopped when he became our executive director. And as he's gotten older, he's filled a different role, and he started fostering again because he felt like, he goes and speaks to people about fostering, and he's like, how hypocritical of me to not also be fostering. And he and his wife got fostered, and they're in their 60s, and they took 2 kids. And when the kids went home, they're like, this isn't for me. I can't do it anymore. And that's fine, because they tried it and they realized, you know what? No, how I'm helping is my job, and what I'm doing is that. And I think that the worst thing we can ever do and I always tell this to when I supported families directly, you have a kid in your home, the parents' rights get terminated, and where's this kid going to go? You know, they're 3 years old and I don't know if I should adopt this child. I don't really feel like I should, but if not me, then who? And I'd always tell them, don't adopt a child out of obligation, because there are people out there who will take that child, and you're stealing an immense, the blessing of parenthood from somebody because you feel like you have to. And almost always the parents who aren't supposed to end up saying, okay, well, I'll see. And then another family comes up and it's like a perfect fit. And I think that's true for us in our lives too. We feel like, well, I guess I should do this. And it's like, well, should you? Just because you feel like you should, does that mean you should, look into it and see. And just like, our vice president realized, oh, like it was great that I could give a home to them for that time, but this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. I think sometimes we just assume like, oh, I should be doing this. Well, everyone should, but what does it look like for you? Does that mean you should be doing that exact thing?
Yeah, I'm really going to sit on that piece of the puzzle part. That was probably the most powerful thing. Then there was a lot that we have covered today. But yeah, that part to me, I'm taking home for sure. And then let's dive into how we met.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know we went through this whole big backstory as to what 4Kids is about and all of that and what you have going on, which is super exciting. But you and I have crossed paths because of the cryptocurrency world and the NFT space. And with the artist J Tunes and his endeavor that our project NF Daddies is helping to facilitate, and in his Street Tunes collection, which is a NFT collection that's going to a significant portion of the proceeds are going to go to 4Kids. And we're very excited to be partnered with J Tunes, as well as being indirectly partnered with you guys over at 4Kids. So maybe you can just give your background as to how you got in touch with J Tunes and how that came about.
Yeah. I'm excited because, we probably have about 100 people or so directly employed by 4Kids, and we've got like an army of volunteers. And I think I might be the only person on staff that actually holds crypto. I really pushed us to be able to receive donations, and people have been like, isn't that funny money? Or, what is cryptocurrency? He's like, well, I mean, if people want to give it to us, why not? So after months of getting it worked out, we were able to receive it through a third-party platform called The Giving Block, which is doing a lot of great work to raise awareness about crypto adoption and using it for good. So just out of nowhere, one day I get an excited email from our director of finance saying, we got $500 from someone. So I look and I just assumed it was like somebody who had seen us posting about it on like Facebook or Twitter or something. And it was somebody who had never given to us. So it was the artist J Tunes. I ended up reaching out to him. I was like, hey, how'd you hear about us? Because just curious. And he went on to explain how he had started a project called Street Kids, and how he was just so frustrated with the fact in the NFT space that people are raising money for other causes like cancer awareness or wounded warriors, which is all great. But what about people like him who may have come from a hard background, and who's helping kids? And what I love about him is his mindset was, well, why not me? He saw a problem and he's like, I'll do it. So he had sold a few specific NFTs of some from his Street Kids line, and he donated the project, some of the proceeds to us. So I think he shared recently, and I didn't even know this until he mentioned it in like a recent Spaces, that after having a conversation with me and how excited I was to kind of see that working, that he decided to just kind of change his whole direction with a project and go towards what he's calling now Street Tunes, which is going to launch soon. And I'm just like, I loved it. So I went and I talked to our team and I was like, hey, how can we help him do this well? Because he wants to promote 4Kids. He wants to give us the proceeds. And what I really, really love about it, and I know you'll probably be on board with this too, is that 4Kids, like as a brand, we like to be careful about how we're used. We don't want the kids to be seen as like, hoodlums, to make a joke, because, J Tunes says hoodlums. And like what I love about what he's doing is like, I told him, hey, if kids are going to be like doing graffiti or, doing drugs or something in the NFTs, I don't want to tell you how you want to do it. Just don't use our 4Kids logo on those. And he's like, the whole reason I'm doing what I'm doing is like, I'm trying to basically redeem the word hoodlums and street kids. Like, just because we're on the street, just because we don't look like typical what you would expect, doesn't mean we're bad kids. So like, to me, it's like, it's really validating that like, he's walked down the same line as us. And like how we've kind of just come together to use NFTs and crypto for good. So I'm really excited to see, like, I think it was like one of his marketing people who posted a picture of a panda from Street Tunes, and it had like the 4Kids hoodie on and then a hat that says we're all going to make it. And I'm like, that's just so symbolic of what we do.
Yep.
You know, like 4Kids and, you know, J Tunes in the NFT space. That's what we're all trying to do. We're just trying to help all the kids make it. And I know that's like such a crypto term. We're all going to make it. We're all in here so early, but like, it was almost like, you know, an emotional moment for me to see that, about how
your worlds colliding.
Yeah. And it was just like really encouraging, because I know he feels the same way. And it's just like, I love the partnership there. And I love that. I mean, I was telling some of our staff about it yesterday, and it's like, of course the money coming in is great, but the awareness and just people kind of seeing how the community is now built and been like, wow, look at this awesome thing happening for kids.
Heck yeah.
You know, people are going to get their lives changed, hopefully, and understand, hey, there's kids out there suffering and I can do something to help. And, you know, if we get money through there, great. And if we don't, great, because people are learning about a problem and hopefully they're going to be moved to help, whether it's through buying a street tune or calling a local agency and saying, hey, let's get Care Portal up here.
Absolutely. Yeah, that to me, and that's what our project is all about. And our big hashtag is Together We Raise, because we want to raise awareness for initiatives that we think are really important. And 4Kids is really important. And that's why we're on board totally with J Tunes. Is like because when we found J Tunes, it was like he was just about ready to give up on the NFT space, because just things just weren't going his way. He had some, you know, personal dilemmas going on, and all of a sudden it shifted, because we saw a lot of what J Tunes was doing, and we were like, dude, you can't quit. You know, this is something that you're very talented, and your drive and initiative is very inspiring, and that alone needs to keep you in this industry, like that alone. And now all of a sudden we start learning about 4Kids and all the, and I did an interview with him that's going to air this week, and learning his backstory. I'm like, there is no doubt in my mind we're going to make it. Like, this is incredible story on him too, and from him coming from his background as a street kid. And that's the whole purpose of his project. And that's the part of the rebranding that I absolutely can't get enough of, especially as a sales and marketing guy. Like, how does it get any better? And to go and to be able to talk to you, Kevin, and understand what 4Kids is all about, and all the different initiatives that you guys have going on, and the expansion, and the very thoughtful process that you go through for that expansion as well. And keeping it a jazz band, as you say, it's like, it warms my heart, because I come from the industry, not recently, but I come from social work. I spent 6 years doing in between group homes, and I call it privatized probation, because that's what it was. It's like, I've seen it from inside of those facilities. I've went to the parents' homes. I've gone into the courtrooms. Like, I've done the whole circuit. And 4Kids it's such an important piece of that overall puzzle for reunification, that I'm so happy to support and be a part of in a very small way, but in a way nonetheless.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I've said this to J Tunes a lot. Like, he keeps saying, I just want to help. I want to help. And I'm like, listen, you're part of it now. Like, you're in it. Like, you're a partner of ours. And like, he's introduced 4Kids to people that, if I had just started tweeting at people, they would have been like, okay, whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So, and I don't care about 4Kids brand getting out there. I care about our mission, you know, getting out, about let's provide hope, homes, and healing to kids. And if it's through a different agency in a different state, fine. But kids need hope, and they need a home, and they need parents, and they need to heal. You know, I think we all need to heal from certain things, you know?
Oh yeah.
So, and you know, we're a faith-based agency, but I'm very careful about how we say that, because people assume that as a faith-based agency, you only work with, you know, you only go to churches. But like I said, we're a movement. Like, we work with businesses from all over the place, helping connect them and meet needs and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And J Tunes has been awesome. And I'll just say real fast about him. He's like one of the hardest working people I know. You know, when I first had my conversation with him, he's like, text me if you have any questions, text me what you need. I only sleep about 4 hours a day. And I was like, sure, okay. And then like, I'm seeing him out there tweeting and putting out things he's drawn. And I'm like, man, this guy really, like, not only is he an incredibly hard worker and he's passionate about what he does, he really, really wants to make a difference.
He does.
And like, that is so on brand with like 4Kids culture that, you know, we just want to make a difference. And so like, I'm honored that he would choose, now that I've gotten to know him more, that he would choose to support our work. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. I can't wait for Street Tunes to drop. I told him I want to buy one of the first ones. And
yes, awesome.
We got NFT
awesome.
Tuesday coming up on December 9th through the Giving Block. Like Giving Tuesday was this past Tuesday, and then I don't know if this will come out before then. But I was like, let's blow it up. Let's talk.
You said December 9th?
Yes. So
so December 9th is a Wednesday, Thursday?
Maybe. Oh no, it's
next Thursday.
Let me get my date right here. So it'll be December 7th, my mistake.
Okay, so next Tuesday.
Yeah. So if we're not
how crazy. So J Tunes is actually going to be on the Tuesday Live Crew show on Tuesday, which is his episode's going to air on that NFT Tuesday. So that's going to be fun.
Awesome. Yeah. I told him
that's perfect timing.
Our rep from the Giving Block, which is how we receive crypto donations. She's like, I told her about it. She was like super excited about it too. And they're trying to promote using NFTs for good. And I was like, you know, forget 4Kids. Look what he's doing over there.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, how can we promote him? So I connected them and he filled out like some information about it. So I'm excited for him to get seen for what he's doing. And also, you know, it helps 4Kids, but
yeah, absolutely.
It's cool how like that stuff kind of works out to fall on those days.
And that's how the space is in general too, is just whenever you put out your intentions and they are true intentions to assist and help. And it's amazing how many people will come to your side and come to your aid whenever you are being genuine in your endeavors. And I know J Tunes is so genuine in what he's doing and all the work he's putting in. So with that, I want to close up on that. Is there anything more, Kevin, that you'd like to get across to the listeners here? How they can maybe get in touch with you or the Giving Block, and maybe how they can donate their time or money?
Yeah, sure. If anyone's interested in, you know, supporting 4Kids, you know, like I said, we're primarily based in South Florida, but we partner with local agencies. Our website, simple 4Kids, the number 4kids.us is our website. You can look me up on Twitter if you want. I'm happy to interact with you there. It's just my Twitter handle is @4kids_crypto. And it's just how I'm kind of using the crypto space to engage 4Kids. And if you're not in this area, you want to get involved. It's kind of like what I encouraged in the beginning, you know, find somewhere that's doing good work and help. I think in a recent space, I said the most valuable thing you can give the kids is your time. You know, the money's great, and you know, spreading the word is great, but really like sitting down and spending an hour with somebody who feels like they don't have anyone that cares about them is just so incredibly valuable. So, and even if, you know, you don't want to go through the trouble of getting background checked or things like that, find a kid in your neighborhood and just say, hey, you know, let's play catch. You want to go get something to eat together, or, you know, sit down and talk to them. It just makes incredible change. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin, so much for coming on to the show. And as always, guys, enjoy the journey. Take care.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for sticking here until the very, very end. If you wouldn't mind just leaving a comment or subscribing or liking the podcast or wherever you downloaded this, maybe it was from YouTube, I would love for that. You take an extra couple seconds to give us some more love, even though you have listened here to the very, very end. We appreciate that so much. Could you also go over to thestarspodcast.com if you found any of this really interesting and you wanted to dive in a little bit further? Or go to our Discord, which is Rocinante Studios NFT. Enjoy the journey.